Thank you. I think the question I would have is, this is a lot of project, this number is a big number. And if you look ahead beyond this year, is the same kind of thing going to happen in the future? It seemed to look that way showing those charts. Can you make a comment about that? And then what are we really talking about in terms of economic impact, like jobs and those kinds of situations, lost federal revenue, all those kinds of things?
Well, the state, Mr. Chairman, the state has never lost any federal revenues. They've always managed to figure out a way to take care of all of the federal revenues coming in. But obviously, if this situation were to continue and the decline was to continue at the rate it has occurred, that could be a problem in the future. I would say that the volatility of the price-based excise tax, as I think was discussed with the previous panel, is really problematic on top of the not having sufficient revenues to take care of our existing system. The fact of the matter is that you asked, I think it was you, Senator, that asked the question relative to would it be better to go with the proposals that are included in the governor's plan and your plan, and I think Senator Assemblymember Frazier's plan to set a flat rate for the price-based excise tax and then index it from that point forward. I think that makes a lot more sense because you would eliminate the volatility. And you're going to have a volatile situation if for some reason the price-based excise tax goes up dramatically over the next 5, 10 years or whatever, you might see more revenues coming in. But again, you've got this volatility up and down depending on how the price-based excise tax flows based on its current mechanism. So I think the more reliable way would be, as I think you all have proposed in the funding mechanisms that have been suggested in the 3 proposals that are before the legislature.
Can you talk about I'm always a believer in the idea of making project delivery faster, and I know the commission has looked at that issue with their legislative report. Can you talk about the kinds of things we need to do to make the system more efficient? Now, I would look at it in terms of road maintenance and repair and also projects that we all need. There's 2 types of things here.
I don't know.
There's of like
Vice Chair Alvarado wants to comment on that. I would say one of the things that we're probably not utilizing to the extent that we should is new technology, is all of the kinds of improvements that could be made to make the existing system operate better. We are talking about implementing express lanes and things of that nature to get more out of the existing system. I think that clearly there needs to be more focus on making better use of what we have. I think that there are some places and some opportunities where new capacity could provide benefits. But we have a $1.2 trillion investment in the existing system, and we need to take care of that system. And so the mantra of fix it first makes a lot of sense in terms of spending dollars to take care of that system and avoid, as you pointed out repeatedly, Mr. Chairman, having to pay much more for the system going forward.
Yeah, and I think the last question I would have is like, we really need to look at long-range projections on maintenance and life cycle costs and making it more effective and efficient the way we do that, not only at the state with Caltrans, but also with local government. And one of the reforms that was approved by this commission was to, this committee was to, in the special session, the committee in the special session, was to have an oversight by the commission, the State Transportation Commission, of the SHOP program to make sure those projects are completed efficiently and effectively. And we can get the best bang for our buck with those projects, the SHOP projects. These are the maintenance, safety kind of projects. Can you tell us what kinds of things the commission can do to make those projects and get better reliability on those projects and finishing the projects as quickly as possible?
Go ahead.
Well, when you look back at Prop 1B, what we asked the regions to do was even get together and look at priorities for like a super region. There were 3 regions, and all the local transportation agencies were part of one of those 3 super regions, if that's what you want to call them. So they prioritized those projects, and some counties or some transportation agencies gave up all of their share to make sure that traffic flowed, so that any project made sense, so traffic flowed freely. I think we can do the same thing with the maintenance. Let's get the regions involved, because when you look at a rural county that's having a problem and it's a bottleneck on 101, when the regions get together, they can fix things like that. But we've got to be able to, number one, prioritize all of the maintenance. We got to have a steady funding stream, because a lot of these projects are more than 1 fiscal year long. They're more than 1 fiscal year in planning and design and engineering. So if you know you have a steady source of income, we get away from this boom where, okay, we've got a lot of money, let's program a lot of projects, and now we're back on the other side of that. There is no money, and one of the reasons that we took that orange line is all of the work that's been done to bring these projects forward. When you deprogram, all that work is gone. You just don't bring it back and plug it back into the system. You got to start all over again.
Like wasted.
It's gone. It's took a match to the money. So what I think the prudent thing that we've done at the commission is keep those projects in the pipeline and hope that you folks can come up with a plan so that we can program some of them and not have them all start dropping off. When you see a project, if you look at our agenda, you see a project that's been deprogrammed, it's not coming back. It's gone.
Mr. Chairman, I would add, with respect to the making sure that the SHOP investment is effective, I think you gave the commission a role in overseeing the SHOPS program, which I think makes a lot of sense, but you also wisely created an asset management program,
right.
Which is akin to what local agencies have done recently in the development of pavement management systems, so that they have a better sense of how they're managing the overall system. So the improvement to a pothole doesn't end up just happening in front of the mayor's house. It ends up happening over the whole system from a strategic investment perspective. And I think that's what an asset management plan that Senate Bill 486 provides for us will allow us to do, working collaboratively with Caltrans and with the regional agencies as we identify the highest priority improvements that need to be done for the system. We've already begun work on that. We have developed classes of assets that the commission has approved, and we're working with Caltrans to make sure that we implement the will of the legislature in terms of taking better care of our existing system.
And that includes efficiency and increased efficiency with Caltrans, speeding up projects, not over budgeting staff, and those kinds of things, correct?
Yeah, it does, and the reason that I think that's important is because the more we can save on the efficiency side, the more we can invest back in the existing system.
Yeah.
So there, with that oversight, I think we'll be able to provide some improvements along those lines as well.
Thank you. Questions from our members. Senator Allen, Senator Bates.
Thank you. Just to follow up on what Mr. Alvarado was saying, making sure that we're not shooting ourselves in the foot in terms of the funding. I know that there is some there's some contracts with LA Metro, for example, for light rail vehicles that are funded out of STIP, and I know that some other transit agencies around the state are in a similar situation. In the past, the CTC has prioritized funding for projects that are already under contract, and I just wanted to get a sense if that's still the plan, that we're going to prioritize those projects that have been contracted for. as you're making decisions about how to deal with the reduced funding.
Well,
For example, the BART cars, how would that work?
Well, Commissioner Alvarado brings up the BART cars, and, when we have a commitment to a project and we're making progress, it becomes a higher priority for continued investment. That doesn't mean that all of those projects can necessarily escape the kinds of cuts that may need to be made, but it does indicate, it does give us a step forward in terms of addressing those problems earlier when we gain additional dollars. So a project that is under contract or a project that is already underway, those are obviously very important. You don't want to leave. I remember back in my career, and Senator Bell will remember this, when we had the I-680, 880, 280 interchange in San Jose that was left with just one of the bridges pointing out to nowhere. And ultimately, then Senator Alquist was able to convince the administration at the time that that road needed to be improved. And so there needs to be an ongoing commitment to projects that are already underway.
Senator Bates?
Thank you. You don't care if I call you Will, do you?
I do not.
All the years that we shared that wonderful room at OCTA. We've heard from the previous speaker panel and yourselves that there are solutions here, and I think that might have been elusive as we first started down this path when we looked at I think the huge number dollar-wise that we are needing. But you did talk about reforms, Will, and I think what would be very helpful to us legislators is if we got that from the experts, yourself, CTC members, what are the reforms that you see would be very helpful in helping us communicate to our constituencies that we're going to do that, promises made, promises kept, and here's what we're looking at. I think that's crucial. We heard Senator McGuire talk about fairness. Clearly in the public, they don't think a lot of things are fair currently, like the, electric vehicles getting to ride in the HOV free if we're going to do the 3+ and throw those guys out of HOV, all of the things that got discussed at OCTA when I was there. It's not difficult to get people to get involved when they see a solution, and we can ensure that there will be these promises and government will keep those. So I think it would be very helpful if you could outline some of the reforms. And I asked Ted here initially, if we have to deprogram because we don't have the money, because these projects have to reapply, what could we do right now to stop the deprogramming or ensure that they could get reprogrammed very quickly if we come up with a solution, let's say, within the year or the 18 months? Because that's something that I think has always troubled us, and perhaps me in particular when I served on OCTA. It takes so long to get in the queue with all the applications you have to make. That's something that you all are directly responsible to and for. How can we change that? So not to ask you how to do it today, but if you present us some things that are very tangible, then we have a better opportunity to articulate that to those we're trying to convince. And I just think M2, Measure M2, I'm running for Board of Supervisor, very contested race, lots of money. I'm the only one that steps up and supports tax in probably the most redneck part of Orange County, and I get elected because I could articulate what we were going to get and that there was no opportunity for any, bait and switch. So you give us something like that in the shortest time possible, and then maybe we get somewhere in this legislative year, or at least when we get to 2017. Because without that, we're going to still have the divides. And, I think about the discussion about what it does to the economy. I was here in the Assembly when the vehicle license fee increase was suggested, and a governor lost his job because of that, because from the folks out there, middle-income folks who make their living, in their cars through transportation, they couldn't afford it. And we had hearings all over the state, and it was very volatile and somewhat vicious, I might say, in Orange County at the time. So, that doesn't translate to the folks in a general sense that this is going to hurt the economy. Well, yeah, if you put another fee on me, another tax on me, let me tell you what it's going to do to my economy. So we need a better package.
So Senator Bates, the commission directed us this year to include as part of our annual report specific pragmatic recommendations that the legislature could take and put in place the kinds of reforms that we think would make a difference. And I'm happy to say that a number of those recommendations have already been picked up by members of the legislature, and there's been a number of bills introduced that would implement some of those reforms. So I think that is really key, and I think is to the point that you were making. Again, I think that you've got to have some realistic reforms in place before we can ask taxpayers to dig into their pockets any deeper. You clearly have to make sure that those dollars are dedicated and protected. And you have to have accountability in place so that people will know that their money has been well spent. And again, as Commissioner Alvarado indicated, and I think I mentioned earlier, if you use the model that was Proposition 1B, those kinds of accountability measures really make a difference. And with those in place, we have to earn the public's trust in this respect because, there's been years when it's very difficult to say, just give us more money and we'll make things better. And it's unlike the self-help counties that can specifically point to this project, that project, and the other one that are going to get done. And so there's an obvious means of accountability there. We have a little bit of a bigger challenge at the state level, but I think we can do it, again, following the model of Proposition 1B.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members? Okay. One more from Senator Allen.
Just a clarification. So, and I know you mentioned this earlier, but the 1B accountability measures that you're talking about, this is just reporting, having a list of projects, being able to have like a checklist of all the things that were completed. Is there anything else that you think have been particularly important?
I do, Senator Allen. I think that the fact that we had accountability at the project development level, so again, scope, cost, and schedule were included in project baseline agreements. Sponsors and the director of Caltrans and the executive director of the CTC sign these agreements. And anytime there's a deviation from those agreements, it has to come back for a review and consideration. In some instances, it may make sense. Okay, this makes sense that it can be approved. In others, it doesn't, and it gets kicked back. You've got to figure out another way to correct these issues or to take care of these problems. And I think that has worked well on a project-by-project basis. So it's really not been programmatic or just checking the boxes. It has truly been accountability.